Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to the DME for Peace community, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this week's edition of the M&E Thursday Talks. These Thursday Talk webinars on DME for Peace are made possible with the support of the Carnegie Corporation of New York through the Peacebuilding Evaluation Consortium. My name is Jack Farrell, and I am the DME for Peace Project Manager at Search for Common Ground, based in a miserably wet Washington, D.C. Today, I am delighted to welcome Sam Scarpino, the Chief Data Scientist at Dharma Platform, who's going to lead a discussion on real-time data from the front lines, humanitarian uses of emerging technology. Just a note, if you have a question during the webinar, you can write it in the question function on your GoToWebinar dashboard, and we will make sure to address it once you reach the question and answer section. I'm now going to hand over to today's guest. Sam, you are very welcome to the Thursday Talks, and the floor is all yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Jack, for the introduction. And again, good day, good evening, afternoon, night to everyone. I'm really excited to be here and to tell you all about what we're doing at Dharma Platform and how our platform is being used in a variety of humanitarian responses all around the globe. So just by way of brief introduction, my name is Sam Scarpino. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer, which is a new title for me as of a couple of weeks ago at Dharma Platform. I do also head up all of our data science operations. If you're interested in tweeting anything about the talk, either to me or to Dharma Platform, those are our Twitter handles. My background is as an academic working on the design of public health surveillance systems and the translation of mathematical and computational models into public health and humanitarian response decision support tools, which is what led me to work with Dharma Platform. As I'm sure many of you are aware, one of the key barriers to responses we're involved with is access to high quality real-time data, and in particular, access to these pieces of data in such a way that it doesn't burden or overburden the frontline workers or data collectors. And so the question that I want all of us to have in mind as I go through the presentation, and the question that I'd like to help structure some of our Q&A after I'm done going through the slides, is how can we better leverage technology during humanitarian responses? So one of the early adopters of Dharma had this wonderful quote that said, you know, I'm in the field and I'm using paper forms in Excel, and then when I come back, I have Uber, Lyft, Slack, all these technology tools, and for some reason, most of these pieces of technology are not finding their way into our humanitarian responses. And what can we do as a community to better leverage these different available technologies to improve our response, either in terms of its impact or its efficiency or its effectiveness? So what is Dharma Platform? Well, Dharma is a no-code platform for constructing mobile and web data collection applications, deploying them onto Android or iOS devices through the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, gathering data offline or online, synchronizing that data across devices, even if you're offline, using mesh technology, moving all of those data into a secure, privacy-compliant cloud database so that you can share your data with individuals in your project outside of your organization. You can construct real-time dashboards, and then you can pipe that information in real time to any of your downstream analyses or reporting dashboards, for example, Tableau or Salesforce, or custom analytics that you might have written in SAS or SPSS or R or Python. So what we're seeing here is just a screenshot of what someone's project homepage might look like, where they have a bunch of applications they've set up to track asset management, to run clinical examinations, an intake form as a part of a maternal health study, and then an example of the application running on an iPhone or an Apple tablet, although as I mentioned, Dharma runs natively on any Android or iOS device. And the goal is to leverage technology to create sophisticated no-code applications to collect data for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And by that, we mean leveraging technology so that it functions in the most demanding environments. So the expectation is that you're going to be offline while you're collecting data, or you're going to be in environments that are challenging for the technology to function, or working in high-stress environments where you need intuitive user interfaces to make it easy to collect high-quality data. You want to deliver your application to the field seamlessly, meaning there's no need to install manually the applications. You can download them directly from the Google Play Store or the iOS Store, collect data and synchronize it online or offline, track the progress of your team so you can see in real time who's gathering data, when, where, and how long it's taking them, which can be critical for understanding if you need to modify your collection device or provide additional training to team members. Integrate historical data in an automated way. One of the tools we've built in Dharma is an automated function for bringing flat text files or Excel files into Dharma, populating a cloud database, building mobile collection devices to bring these historical data back to life and integrate them with the data you're capturing in real time. And then to be able to share your data with other systems. I couldn't tell you how many people I've spoken with and how many times I found myself in a situation where I didn't have access to data that I'd collected. Either the server that it was on was down, or the consultants that I needed to get in touch with were on vacation or had seemingly disappeared. And so we want to make it as easy as possible to get your data in and out of Dharma in open source interoperable data formats and into all of your downstream applications, or to share with other individuals in your organization or more broadly. So as I mentioned, Dharma is essentially an end-to-end data management platform that's built around this principle of no code. So all of the pieces that you see here in this graphic are set up automatically just through a point-and-click interface. But you can bring in historical data via our transformation engine. You can run all of your program management and data collection operations through the web. It's all hosted in the cloud, as I mentioned, in a secure, privacy-compliant database. And then we provide ready access to open data formats that can be integrated in real time into Salesforce or DHIS2 or Tableau or any of the downstream applications that you might be working with. So a few examples of how Dharma is being used. So I'm going to walk through 4 brief examples, and then I'll do a slightly deeper dive into a recent emergency response that we coordinated with the Ministry of Health in Mexico. So here are 2 examples of organizations going through a digital change process with Dharma. And one of the things that we understand, in part because many of us have worked for organizations like Riders for Health or SEVA in the past, is that digital change is tough. It's hard to go through the process, both from a change management perspective, but also from finding the right technology or data partners. And that's one of the things we pride ourselves on at Dharma, is our experience helping organizations go through this digital change process. So Riders for Health, which is a last mile healthcare provider that uses motorcycles and other vehicles to deliver healthcare into rural populations throughout Africa, impacting 35 million people. We've helped them transition from paper records into digital-based systems for tracking laboratory samples, for tracking things like motorcycle maintenance, et cetera. And they've estimated we've saved them over 250,000 pieces of paper. They've gone from waiting months to see data to seeing data nearly in real time on the populations they're working with. We also completed a migration of over 15 years of data from SEVA, which is a foundation that does eye surgeries and consultations related to eye-related health conditions throughout the world. They've seen over 5 million patients, and we moved all of their records that were scattered across Excel spreadsheets into a Dharma database. So they have them in the cloud, they're interoperable, generating dashboards, and now they can begin collecting and reporting using the mobile applications built from Dharma. We've been involved in a number of humanitarian responses. As I mentioned, I'm going to speak in a little bit more depth about one involving the Mexican Ministry of Health. But with the World Health Organization, they completed a 150,000 interview survey in 5 days in Iraq while there were active conflicts ongoing using Dharma. We worked with Habitat for Humanity, 74 volunteers and 180 households to assess devastation associated with houses after Hurricane Harvey in Houston. One of the reasons that they came to us was because they were able to capture photos offline using their devices and then synchronize them back to a local headquarters where they were making prioritization decisions around how to respond. One of my favorite stories about this effort is, given the timeline, they wanted to be up and running in under 48 hours. We were ready to send someone down to Houston to help train all of their volunteers and their data managers. We had someone who was literally boarding an airplane when they called us and said, "We're up and running. It's super easy. We don't need you to fly down here anymore." And they were able to just go and collect data immediately, which is exactly the goal that we're trying to achieve with Dharma, that you can stand this up quickly and with little to no need for training, especially for those organizations that already have deep experience around data capture or humanitarian response like Habitat or the WHO. As I mentioned, we were involved in Mexico's response to the devastating earthquakes in September 2017. In particular, the Ministry of Health reached out to us to find out if they could use Dharma to crowdsource needs assessments in some of the most affected areas, because they were unable to get individuals into these locations to do surveys around the state of devastation, around the public health needs. So what they did is construct a mobile application in Dharma for gathering the types of needs assessments that you might imagine one would need to conduct after a major earthquake: access to drinking water, access to medical services, safety and security in different neighborhoods. And then they sent these mobile applications out to a cadre of volunteers that they had trained in the communities remotely to start gathering data. So these are a couple pictures of training the data managers who would work with the crowdsourced individuals around gathering the data. So in just 60 days after being able to start collecting data within 48 hours of setting up the project, they had 44 citizen volunteers conduct surveys on 800 households and complete 1,600 surveys that came back in real time to the Ministry of Health on the most affected areas of the earthquake, so that they could start prioritizing their response and utilizing these real-time field level data to try and get an understanding about the ground truth after the earthquakes. The technology challenges that they faced, as I mentioned, are exactly the kinds of challenges that Dharma was built for, dealing with situations where there's little to no connectivity. And as I'm sure all of you are well aware, that access to connectivity is a global problem. There are places in every country, even outside of natural disasters or emergencies, where you shouldn't expect to have connectivity to the cloud. And so if you're going to leverage a cloud-based technology, you need one that functions offline, that can synchronize data offline using mesh technology, and that can share connections using mesh technology should some individuals have a connection and others not. They were dealing with inexperienced data collectors. So the individuals that were designing the study had a lot of experience, but because they were crowdsourcing, the people collecting the data had little to no experience interviewing individuals, gathering data, either via paper forms or mobile applications. So they needed a user interface that was highly intuitive, and they needed to be able to track staff performance, collector performance, so they could highlight areas of the survey that maybe they needed to modify or clarify or provide additional training. And then the really critical piece for them was having access to real-time data so that they could start prioritizing their response to these earthquakes. Again, as I'm sure many of you understand quite well, that delays in data, lead directly to lives lost, reduction in quality of life, to increasing costs and complexity of the response. And so really, having access to an app that works offline, having access to an app that works with inexperienced data collectors doesn't mean much unless you can still get the data in real time to the decision makers, also feeding back to the individuals who are collecting the data. And that's exactly what they were able to do using Dharma. And so the question that I'd like us to come back to, and that I'm hoping we can use to structure the conversation over the second half of the webinar, are what are your technology goals? And the reason that I use the word goals is because at Dharma, we'd like to understand how technology can be leveraged to make our jobs easier so that we can spend more time working on the response, working with individuals in the community, as opposed to wrangling and cleaning data. How can we leverage technology to make that a reality? So it's not just that we want to deploy a technology solution, it's that we want to deploy a technology solution that makes our jobs more effective and easier, and reduces the burden of data collection on those individuals that are on the front lines or in the field capturing information, and that provides value both back to those individuals who are working on the front lines and gathering data, tasked with the burden of collecting data often, and those individuals who we are actually trying to help as a part of the response. So we want to have this be a full loop that benefits all individuals across the organization that's coordinating the response, and back to those individuals that we are responding to. If you're interested in learning more about Dharma, in talking with us about digital transformation, deploying mobile applications, how our technology might be able to fit into your existing pipelines, I'll show you our email address and website on the next slide, but in the month of April, we're going to be at 3 really exciting conferences. April 9th, that week, we'll be in Oxford at the Skoll World Forum. We'll actually be doing a number of events with Writers for Health, and so for those of you that are going to be at the Skoll World Forum, we'd love to see you and chat with you. For the folks in Washington, D.C., or in the area, we're going to be at the DHIS2 Symposium. And as you know, there's going to be a number of really interesting technology platforms and solutions that are going to be present there, Dharma being one of them. We would certainly love to chat with you or talk with you in person there. And then the week of April 29th, we'll be giving a couple of talks at the ICT for D conference in Kampala, Uganda. Again, so for individuals that are going to be attending that conference or in the area, we would certainly love to talk to you in person or have you attend one of our events. It's been such a pleasure getting to share a little bit about who we are at Dharma, what some of our users have been able to accomplish with the platform. For those that would like to learn more, to set up a demo, to read our white paper, there's a wonderful video that Writers for Health put together around their digital transformation process, both with Dharma and with other technology providers. You can email us at info@dharmaplatform.com. You can also email me directly, sam@dharmaplatform.com, or you can visit our website where you'll be able to find information about the white paper, the videos, to schedule a demo or a follow-up call. And with that, I'm very much looking forward to the conversation that's going to happen over the next 20 or 25 minutes, and excited to answer your questions. Thank you.
Great, Sam. Thank you very much for being a great presenter. To our audience, this is your fun part. We're now going to open up to questions. A couple of notes about our format for the new faces. You can submit a question in one of two ways. The first is through the question function on GoToWebinar. That is on your dashboard, allowing you to type your question. The second is to click on the little hand icon on your GoToWebinar dashboard, which will allow us to unmute your microphone so you can ask your question live. When you do submit your question, we ask that you submit your name and affiliation. Just a note, these webinars are recorded and posted on Dean Fries's Media Gallery, so that those who are not able to join us at this time can go back and listen to the presentation and learn from our wider discussion. I have a question that I'm going to use to kick off the discussion, Sam, and use my moderator's privilege here. So understanding that data collection challenges are massive, what about the data analysis aspect? One of the things I really see as a gap in particularly peace building and the human rights fields is our ability to understand the insights that our data is telling us. So I just wonder, does obviously Dharma links in with Tableau, but are there aspects that are there any ways of improving data analysis through this?
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great question, Jack. And just to restate, which is, how is Dharma going about the analytics side of data, especially as it pertains to humanitarian responses, or sort of responses in general in the INGO space? We have two approaches. The first is having clean, high quality data in an easy to use format is often the biggest barrier to high quality analytics or deriving insights, that people either spend a huge amount of time that's already in short supply just getting the data to the point where they can start running analytics, or the results of the analytics are inaccurate or biased or misleading because the data aren't clean. It's hard to understand their structure. There's missing data. And so we feel that the biggest piece that Dharma provides in the puzzle around analytics and insights is access to high quality, clean, interoperable data. Now, within the platform, we have live dashboards that show you a variety of graphs and charts around your data. So you can see in real time series associated with events that are happening. Imagine that you're tracking a cholera outbreak in a refugee camp. You can see real-time analytics around the epidemiological data. You can also define custom indicators. So an example might be what fraction of individuals have access to clean drinking water. There could be 15, 20, 30 different questions as a part of the survey that all relate to this one variable, access to clean drinking water. You can define this as a custom indicator and see it live on your dashboard in real time. The other piece of this is when you create your collection device in Dharma, Dharma knows automatically without having to be told if you're running a longitudinal survey or a longitudinal record system, or if you're sampling data in a hierarchical way. So imagine that you're running a type of census, and so you have a state. Within the state, there's cities, cities have neighborhoods, neighborhoods have households, households have individuals. Dharma is able to calculate things like confidence intervals and point estimates, controlling for the sampling design without any need for additional input, because you've already programmed that into the system. And so one of the things that we're actively innovating in is how to leverage that kind of information even more effectively to give access to things like, advanced machine learning methods, predictive analytics within the platform.
Great. That's really exciting, Sam. The next question comes from Matthew Downer. And Matthew writes, how would you say the data collection aspect of this tool is better than what is already available through Kobo and others? And does privacy compliant mean GDPR compliant?
Yeah, great question, Matthew. I'll answer the GDPR question first, which is yes. So some of Dharma's original large users needed to be in compliance with the European Union privacy regulations that existed prior to GDPR. And so after GDPR was enacted, we went through the process of ensuring that, at least to the best of our lawyers' understanding around GDPR compliance, that our tool was in compliance with GDPR. Obviously, that's going to be an evolving understanding as we learn more about what that actually means. But in terms of following the letter of the current regulations, Dharma is in GDPR compliance. We've also worked with entities that needed in the United States to be in HIPAA compliance, and that obviously requires a separate engagement with Dharma that's a part of a contract of our interaction. And in many ways, the HIPAA compliance moves you out of GDPR compliance because you often have the data stored in US soil. But those sorts of more sophisticated compliance items are certainly things that we've dealt with in the past. In terms of differentiators, one of our key differentiators from existing tools is our ability to rapidly scale to large data collection projects. So going from tens of collectors, hundreds of collectors, thousands of collectors, hundreds of thousands of data points, captured in a day. That to us has been one of the reasons that people migrate from an existing tool to Dharma, is that they find that their tool basically breaks at scale. Our offline technology is a piece that we have spent a lot of time trying to perfect and then also stay on the cutting edge of what's possible. So the ability to leverage mesh, the ability to gather data offline, and then synchronize that data back to the cloud in such a way that you don't end up with duplicate records or records that merge on top of each other, et cetera. So the offline connectivity piece and functionality piece is one that not every platform has. The ability to run single point surveys, longitudinal record systems, longitudinal surveys, hierarchical sampling designs or surveys is again something that we have native in the application that is not present across the other tools. There are, of course, for all of these things I'm listing, some of the tools have them, some don't. At Dharma, we are trying to be a solution that encompasses all these different use cases. And then the last thing I'll mention, although one of the pieces that we would love to talk with you about are what your individual needs are, what's not working with your existing platform, and whether Dharma would be able to solve those particular needs or not, is this automated data migration tool. So either if you're collecting data on paper forms or Excel spreadsheets and you want to move that into the cloud and collect data, or you just want to transition from one platform to another platform, we try to make that as easy and painless as possible using these automated migration tools.
Thank you very much, Sam. One of our next questions comes from Pedro Portela. And Pedro asks, can you explain what you mean with mesh technology?
Absolutely, Pedro. Great question. Mesh technology, and I should have gone into more detail the first time that I brought this up, uses the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi capabilities on your tablet or mobile device to construct a local network tethering devices together. So imagine that there are 10 or 15 of us that are working in relatively close proximity, such that we're within the range of the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi on our phones or tablets, or we've set up a wireless access point that we can all tether to. We're able to synchronize data across our devices using that network that we've built. So if I'm collecting data on an individual on my device, Jack would be able to see it on his device if we're connected to the same network. And if one of us has connectivity, let's say that I have 3G or better connection, or I'm connected to the broadband internet, but there are other individuals that are further away and they can't reach the Wi-Fi signal, or I'm hardwire connected, we can share connectivity to sync data across devices and then up to the cloud, which would then synchronize across everybody that's connected.
Great, thank you very much, Sam. Our next question comes from Kate McMillan, who works at Plan International. And Kate writes, tech solutions seem to work well for collecting quantitative data. Are there examples of technology or Dharma's application being able to collect qualitative data well? For example, overcoming issues of the difficulty regarding typing longer passages on tablets or mobile phones?
That's a great question, and actually an area that I'm passionate about from a research perspective, which is essentially monitoring and evaluation around qualitative data around responses that, say, involve community outreach or other types of endeavors that are difficult to measure quantitatively. In Dharma, we have a couple of ways of working with that. One, does involve an open text response, which, as you said, can be quite cumbersome working on the tablet or smartphone. We have the ability to capture photographs, which are the primary way that individuals have done qualitative data analysis using Dharma, is that they have paired multiple choice categorical responses with shorter open text responses with photographs. One of the tools that we're exploring is the ability to capture video and or record information in audio only, or to translate from audio directly into an open response format. The issues that we're dealing with there are the storage size of those files can make it prohibitive for offline functionality or for syncing in low bandwidth settings, both of which are items that are critical for the majority of our users. It's something that we're in the process of solving, but haven't fully solved for yet. So it's on our roadmap, but it's not a part of our current offering. The second involves the sort of voice to text option, which again, we're operating all over the world in many, many different languages. And the quality of those voice to text options, as I'm sure you're all well aware, are heavily biased towards certain languages. And so figuring out how we continue to have a multilingual platform where we can expect to have voice to text work well is something that we're still working with. But I very much share your passion around the importance of qualitative data and around the need to leverage technology to make collecting that data easier.
Great, thank you, Sam. Our next question comes from Nick White. Nick writes, what research has Dharma done on moving from longer paper surveys to shorter tablet and smartphone surveys? i.e. Dealing with the limitation of the size of screen issues?
That's a great question, Nick. Dharma itself has not done any studies on paper forms versus tablet-based forms, at least in the way that I think you're getting at, which is to say, could we run essentially a randomized trial where certain individuals are collecting data with paper forms, certain individuals are collecting data on tablets, and then we're able to compare head-to-head data accuracy, quality of decisions that are made, time to information, etc. There are other research organizations that have done these kinds of studies, and we've leveraged some of that information in our design of the user experience. And we do have people who are running very lengthy surveys in Dharma, and we know that it's working effectively because they can track their staff performance in real time, and many of these organizations have worked for years on paper forms, and so they already have an expectation around how long it should take, around how complicated it could be. But certainly the process of translating the existing paper forms into a digital survey is one that requires careful attention, and it's a piece that we really pride ourselves on at Dharma, is having a lot of in-house expertise in going through that digital transformation process. So, if we were going to work together to move from a paper form into Dharma, oftentimes we would want to really step back and understand as much as possible with you the whole process around data capture, so that we can design a collection device that meets your needs, and then ideally have the opportunity to evaluate that collection device before it's sent out into the field. But I agree that it would be fascinating to do more research around certain aspects of the paper to digital transformation. So it's certainly the case that you can collect data more accurately, that those data can be more quickly synchronized to the cloud or sent into Excel spreadsheets. But we also know that there's advantages to paper, namely how quickly you can deploy it. It's often the case that larger, more complex forms are easier to see on a large piece of paper. And so that's something that we're continually trying to understand better at Dharma. But really great, fascinating question.
Thank you, Sam. So as people who have joined these webinars for the last few years will know, one of my biggest gripes of working in sort of the peace building development and humanitarian spheres is our failure to adapt technology. There's often a massive resistance to that. And doubling back on the question I mentioned earlier on data analysis, what do you think is required for sort of the development sector to get towards greater application of predictive analytics, or being at a stage where we can actually use predictive analytics to help make decisions that will ultimately result in evidence-based programming? But what are we missing? What is that next step towards sort of integrating machine learning, integrating AI to this field?
That's a great question, Jack, and it's certainly something that I'm very interested in on a number of fronts. One of the key pieces, I think, is really a change management piece. And so understanding how machine learning or predictive analytics is going to improve upon our existing systems and being able to demonstrate that is a really important initial step, because ultimately you're going to need buy-in from lots of different stakeholders, some of whom are going to be asked to learn new skills or make decisions using new tools some of these decisions are going to have huge effects on the lives and livelihoods of individuals. And so really being able to demonstrate the value and utility of predictive analytics. An example of this would be some work I've been involved with around machine learning and clinical decision making, which is to essentially run randomized control trials to evaluate how machine learning methods can improve clinical decision making. An example would be, can we ask fewer questions in the clinic and get to the same level of accuracy with the diagnosis, which would be something that would make frontline healthcare workers able to see and care for more individuals, or lighten the mental stress of their jobs a little bit, but would be a complement to the existing capacity. I think the second piece is to really find mechanisms for engaging with technology partners who have both experience working in the humanitarian, dev aid, public health, emergency response space, but also experience developing and critically deploying new decision support predictive analytics tools so that they really understand the change management component, how to develop tools that are going to solve specific problems, that are going to complement existing systems, that are going to advance existing capacity. One program that I've been very interested in how we might start as a community is embedding individuals with graduate level quantitative training and predictive modeling, computer science, et cetera, in humanitarian or public health or emergency response organizations, essentially as an alternative postdoctoral experience. So instead of going and doing a postdoc in an academic research group, you would do a postdoc spending a year working in one of a number of different agencies. That does two things. One, it builds an understanding on the part of the technologists and the individuals with the predictive analytics skills around the actual needs, use cases, challenges, et cetera, in the humanitarian space. It also helps build trust and understanding and identify opportunities for the utility of predictive modeling within our organizations.
Sam, thank you very much for that detailed response, and thank you for such a great question and answer section. I'm going to wrap up today's Q&A with one final question. If people want to access Dharma, how can they do that? And actually add a second question, how much does it cost?
So if you want to access Dharma, the easiest way is to go to www.dharmaplatform.com, although I think that www is probably dating myself a little bit because you don't need that anymore. Or send an email to sam@dharmaplatform.com or info@dharmaplatform.com, or you can tweet at me or all variety of different ways. We can set up a time to do a demo, to talk about your technology needs, et cetera. In terms of cost, that's actually one of the really interesting pieces. And I thought your question was going to be about barriers to technology implementation, as not so specifically focused on predictive analytics. And I was going to talk about the cost piece. And one of the barriers I actually think is that lots of technology offerings operate on subscription models, but lots of our responses or activities that we're involved with are project-based. So we have a specific project that we're trying to complete with a finite timeline and a finite budget. And so one of the things that we do at Dharma is to really work with you to understand how large and complex your project is, how long it's going to be running, to find a cost model that works for you. Some organizations, they know exactly what they need, exactly how to do it. They take Dharma off the shelf and they go. There are other organizations that maybe this is the first large-scale data collection project they've operated with. They have lots of historical data maybe that they need to migrate. And so our engagement with them might be much more involved. So those are the kinds of things that we would need to understand from a cost perspective. So that's the short answer, is that the cost can vary depending on the size and scope of the project, depending on the level of complexity deploying the project, and your needs and internal capacity as an organization.
Great, Sam. Thank you again, and thank you for being a wonderful host today. I really enjoyed your presentation discussion, and thank you to everyone in the audience who continue to make this the best webinar series in the peace building sphere. Just an FYI, the recording will be posted online on our media gallery later today, so you'll be able to return to it and share it with your colleagues. And please feel free to continue the discussion in the comment section. We'll be taking a 3-week break, and we're back on April 18th, where our data kick continues as we welcome members of the Armed Conflict Location Event Data Project, ACLID, to sort of showcase their new platform. And for those of you who don't know, ACLID is a disaggregated conflict analysis and crisis mapping project. So I'm really excited to continue our data discussions. Sam, once again, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much, everyone.